Welcome back to the Michael Lofton Show on a Monday here on Reason and Theology. I'm going to engage some comments that were given or provided in the comment section here, either on YouTube or that were sent on Twitter, among other platforms. So I'm just going to engage some of those comments. I've deleted people's identity out, so there's no identifiable information in here. The only thing I'm going to include is just simply their comment, and then I will interact with it. But first, I want to remind you of our sponsor for this video, realestateforlife.org. If you're looking to buy a home or sell a home, office, or any kind of property anywhere in the world, and you want to support the pro-life movement in the process, you want to check out realestateforlife.org. Certainly go to them and give them your business. In fact, I'm going to pull up their phone number here on the screen so that you can have that as well as the website. You should be able to see it right now, 1-877-LIFE-US1, or email them info@realestateforlife.org. Okay, so I always find these really, really fun, engaging the comment section, at least in video format like this. I don't like responding to a lot of these comments that are of this nature merely on YouTube itself or on Twitter. I don't really enjoy that particularly, but I do find it fun to kind of respond to some of these here in the video format, as well as with y'all, since y'all are watching live, and you can also chime in with your comments there in the comment section. It always makes it fun. And Jamie, I see you there in the chat. Keep up the good work, Michael. Thank you. I appreciate it. I really appreciate that. All right, so let me share my screen and let's take a look at the first comment. Okay, so this one says, Vatican II was a pastoral council. Stop right there. Just stop it. Hashtag just stop it. I'm renaming the show. As soon as I get off, it's going to be just stop it, responding to the comment section. So what's the problem with this? Well, as I've noted before, when we speak of Vatican II as a pastoral council, pastoral does not mean non-doctrinal. Pastoral does not mean non-authoritative. Pastoral does not mean non-binding. And yet, those are the ways in which people assume pastoral is being used. And in fact, the evidence of John the 23rd, Paul VI, and everybody else who was at Vatican II indicates that that is not what was meant by pastoral council. Pastoral is a style of communicating doctrine. Notice I said it's of communicating doctrine, teachings. It's not merely disciplinary. It is a way in which you communicate teachings. Now, teachings are binding, are they not? Yes. If they're non-definitive, religious submission of intellect and will is to be owed to them, according to Lumen Gentium 25, which is in Vatican II. Interesting. Vatican II has stuff to say about doctrine and the Magisterium? Yes. The only people who say Vatican II was a pastoral council are people who have never read Vatican II. Those are the only people. Anybody who's actually read the 16 documents of Vatican II knows that every single document is filled with doctrinal teachings. It is not pastoral in the sense of non-doctrinal. It is pastoral in the way it communicates doctrine. So already this is an epic fail here. The very way this comment begins, it's already a just stop it. Okay. Vatican II was a pastoral council. Only the two documents on faith and morals are binding. Only the two documents on faith. There are no two documents on faith and then one on morals. That just, no. This is something that would be said by somebody who's never read Vatican II. You will find faith and morals in nearly every single document of Vatican II, because Vatican II is teaching. It is a teaching council. It is not merely disciplinary. You'll have a mixture of teachings and disciplines in every ecumenical council, including this one. So the individual says only the two documents on faith and morals are binding. That is incorrect. All of the teachings in all of the documents are binding, with religious submission of intellect and will, and all of the disciplines that are expressed in these documents are also binding and are to be given the assent of obedience. They are all binding. So this individual then says the rest of Vatican II is not binding. This is factually false. It's a just stop it moment. This is one of those things that we need to retire. This is where I think we have failed Catholics. Us Catholics, we failed our other Catholics. The younger Catholics who are coming into the church or newer converts, we've failed them. We have absolutely failed them. And we're continuing to set them up for failure because this is the stuff that they're regurgitating and vomiting all over social media. And it's because we're not teaching them better than this. And we need to do better. We need to step it up. To say the rest of Vatican II is not binding shows that one does not understand the nature of Vatican II, nor one's obligations to the Magisterium. We're setting people up for failure when we do this, and it's only a matter of time before they leave the church. This individual continues, and again, as experts said, one doesn't have to believe Francis is legit, i.e., it's a judgment call, not a schismatic act. This is not something I made up. I think I would have to have the context for the rest of that. I don't seem to recall the context at the moment. I think this may have been something that a person was responding to them saying that they were putting out schismatic content. So we'll move past that one. Let's go to the next one. Okay. All right. So this next comment says, again, those who reject the nearly 2,000-year-old papacy are the modernists. You know what I'm going to say next. Just stop it. You are forbidden to use the word modernism unless you have been a Catholic for 10 years. Forbidden. It's off limits. And I don't know, some of y'all who've been Catholics more than 10 years, y'all still don't need to be using it. Maybe after 10 years, you're on a probationary period. And we'll further assess you at that moment. So modernism, again, dealt with by Pius X and Pascendi and Lamentabili, deals with those who say that they affirm the dogmas of the church, but they completely redefine what they mean. And that is not in discussion here in most of the debates that we have. Even the most progressive people in the Catholic Church, if you listen to them, they'll give a head nod to the dogmas, and the dogmas as they're actually understood, they'll give a head nod to the dogmas. The problem with them is they'll often advocate for disciplines that are contradictory to the dogmas, or they'll just give a head nod to the dogmas but then completely undermine it. So what they're doing is they're not redefining what the dogma means, rather they're just completely sidestepping it. That's not modernism. At best you could call that neo-modernism, maybe a newer form of modernism, but it's not modernism. Traditional Catholics, by definition, do not reject the papacy. So, okay. So I remember this commenter was defining radical traditionalists as traditional Catholics. And that's where the problem is. I think we all can grant that the only kind of Catholic you should be is a traditional Catholic. After all, if you do not value sacred tradition, you're not a Catholic in good standing. Period. End of discussion. You have to maintain the sacred deposit of faith, i.e., sacred tradition. That is a non-negotiable. So every Catholic is a traditional Catholic in that sense. But this person is using traditional Catholic to refer to the tenets of the semi-schismatic and in some cases schismatic radical traditionalists. And this person says they don't reject the papacy. Well, look, I have news for you. The Orthodox don't reject the papacy either. The many Anglicans don't reject the papacy. The problem is they redefine what the authority of the papacy is. Orthodox, Anglicans, and others, they'll say, we accept the papacy. I just don't accept your understanding of the authority of the papacy. And guess what? Many radical traditionalists are in the same camp. So they do reject the papacy in the very same way that Orthodox and some Protestants, namely Anglicans, who would affirm the papacy in theory, in the same way that they reject the papacy. Because they redefine what its authority is, the extent of that authority, what the authority means. You'll notice individuals in this group are rejecting Vatican II. Not only a council backed by the College of Bishops, but also multiple popes. That is rejecting papal authority. Make no mistake about it. Not only papal authority, but conciliar authority as well. And what does that sound like to you? Well, that sounds an awful lot like the Protestants, doesn't it? Yes, and in that sense, they are new Protestants. So this person is thoroughly confused. The only papal authority Modernists have ever followed is the one who they were able to get elected for their own agenda. Wow. So evidently we have a Modernist who's a pope. Okay. And we were able to get him elected through our own Modernist agenda. Okay. And this isn't Protestantism. How? What's amazing to me is, have you noticed the Protestants don't even have to really argue against Catholicism anymore? They don't have to offer a whole lot of apologetics against Catholics. All they have to do is sit back and let people like this, radical traditionalists, destroy the Catholic claims for themselves. They just have to allow those radical traditionalists to destroy the Catholic position. They just sit back and watch. They don't have to do apologetics anymore. Protestants and Orthodox, they just have to sit back and let so-called Catholics destroy the Catholic claims on their own for them, in their place, in their stead. So now we have a Modernist pope. And this person is saying, well, I'm not rejecting the papacy. I'm just not following your Modernist pope. Welcome to Eastern Orthodoxy. They say the same thing. They say, I don't reject the papacy. I just reject the person who is sitting on the papal throne right now. It's the same thing. Let's go to the next one. I previously referred to Michael Lofton at Reason and Theology as the king of poisoning the well. Nice. But was wrong and too quick to judge. He does much better work than I had ever given him credit for. Sorry. Okay, thank you. I appreciate the apology. And but this is something I notice a lot. People will make judgments about me and my theological position without actually listening to what I have to say. Does that sound familiar to you? Who else does that remind you? Who else are they doing that to? Anybody else come to mind? Any names coming to mind? Yes, Pope Francis. They do the same thing to him. So if they do that to Pope Francis, I kind of expect them to do that to me. So, but at least this person recognized it. So I appreciate that. He and I are now in the same boat because I used to be just like that as well. So I get it. We have Pontiff who's bent on changing God's laws. And you guys aren't Protestants, right? You could have fooled me. You sound just like Martin Luther, and you're not Protestant, though. Bent on changing God's laws and destroying tradition. Right. But they are furious when I say they are part of a new Protestant Reformation. They say, no, we're nothing like the Protestant. They refuse to look in the mirror and recognize the resemblance. They refuse it. When in reality, you're saying the same things that the Reformer said. You're no different. In substance, they'll say, oh, but I affirm Vatican I, I affirm Trent, I affirm this and that. Yes, accidentally you have some differences, but substantially you're saying the same thing as them. The papacy is waging war against the tradition. That's what the Protestants were saying. That's what they thought as well. You're effectively no different. You're just a different kind of Protestant. That's why I say the new Protestants. That's why I say this group, I don't say that they're part of the old Protestants. There are some differences. They allegedly accept Trent. They don't actually accept Trent, because if they did, they would accept what Trent said about papal authority over the liturgy. They don't accept that. So, but they think they accept Trent, and they think they accept Vatican I. They don't actually accept Vatican I, because if they did, they would accept Vatican I on the Pope's authority over the liturgy and the Pope's ability to bind consciences, which they don't assent to, and its teachings about the See of Rome and how it won't be a sea of pestilence, though they believe that. I mean, if he's destroying tradition, it's definitely a sea of pestilence. Well, guess what? You don't believe Vatican I, but you don't know that you don't believe Vatican I because you've never actually read Vatican I. You've just heard that Vatican I teaches papal infallibility, and you know nothing else about what the document that taught papal infallibility said about the papacy, broadly speaking. So, all right, we have a pontiff who's bent on changing God's laws and destroying tradition, and they're not good at evangelizing for Protestantism and Orthodoxy. I think they're doing a great job at making Protestant and Orthodox converts. Who's bent on changing God's law and destroying tradition, who has canceled priests. What they call canceling priests traditionally is called disciplining priests and bishops. Disciplining someone now is canceling them. Why? I guess St. Paul, when he disciplined and excommunicated an individual in 1 Corinthians, I guess he was just canceling him. The guy who was sleeping with his mother-in-law, Paul was canceling him. Paul was part of the cancel culture. That's what it is. Who has canceled priests and demoted bishops and cardinals who hold to tradition. They could not define what sacred tradition if their life depended on it. They couldn't distinguish between human apostolic tradition, divine apostolic tradition, ecclesial tradition, active tradition, passive tradition, the various important distinctions that are at play here. They couldn't define and distinguish those things to save their lives, but they are experts, and they are certain. Pope Francis is at war with tradition. Well, guess what? You don't believe Vatican I. You don't. You don't hold the Vatican I. You're not Catholic. It's as simple as that. Now, if you want to repent of that and become Catholic, great, wonderful. But don't fool yourself into thinking you're a Catholic when you're not, because you don't hold to what the councils actually say. Much like the Protestants who thought that they were Catholics but were rejecting the councils. You see how I say there's a lot of resemblance between the new Protestant rebellion and the old Protestant rebellion? I don't say they're absolutely identifiable. That's why I call it a new Protestant rebellion, not the old. But I say they have a lot of points in common with the old Protestant rebellion, and we're seeing it right here. He says, if that's not tyrannical, I don't know what tyrannical is. You've given up Vatican I. You've accepted the idea that the Roman See is a sea of pestilence. Congratulations. You do not hold a Catholic ecclesiology. And it's only a matter of time you'll leave the Catholic Church. You've already left it internally. It's only a matter of time before you'll leave it externally as well. And you'll transfer your communion elsewhere. Okay, so let's see this one. By definition, traditional Catholics, this is, again, an individual who's defining traditional Catholic as really what we would call a radical traditionalist, not what would be an actual traditional Catholic. By definition, radical traditionalists are never in schism. It's impossible. No, it's certainly possible. What happens is you guys are much like the Modernists insofar as you redefine terms. Remember the Modernists that you guys keep talking about? Well, you're actually a lot like them, because the modernists redefined doctrine. They say, yes, we hold to this doctrine, but they redefine what it means. You do the same thing with schism. You're very much like the modernists in that sense. So the same people who are decrying the modernists are ironically very similar to the modernists themselves. They redefine what schism means. And they certainly have the ability, and in many cases are, schismatic. They say the modernists are schismatics. Here we go, redefining terms again. They reject Catholic doctrine. They reject tradition. They use the office of the papacy for their own agenda. Well, there we go. So this person now thinks, again, the papacy is now modernist. The papacy is schismatic. This is exactly what the reformers were saying. The reformers were saying, we're the Catholic Church, not you guys. You guys who are claiming to be the Catholic Church, the Pope, and no, you're not the Catholic Church. We're the real Catholic Church. We're not in schism. You're in schism. It's the same stuff. Well, Lefebvre repeated that same error. I'm not in schism from Rome. Rome is in schism from me. They redefine what schism means. Schism is defined as those who refuse to submit to the Roman pontiff and those who are in communion with him, which is this group. Because they, some people in this group just told us, in fact, I think it may be the same commenter as the earlier one. They just told us they reject the authority of Vatican II in many instances. Okay. You're refusing to submit to the Roman pontiff and his lawful authority. Not only that, but again, they're redefining what schism means. Rather than those who are in communion with Rome, they're saying it's those who are in communion with sacred tradition. Oh, but isn't that what the Protestant reformers did too? Yeah, that's what the Protestant reformers were doing as well. I'm not in schism. You're in schism because you're abandoning the faith. So, ironically, it is they who are the modernists. Okay, so here's somebody who says, at least he doesn't worship Pachamama like you do, saying that I worship Pachamama. And I think they're referring to Taylor Marshall. I think this was a comment on something that I said about Taylor Marshall, and they say, at least he doesn't worship Pachamama like you do. Right. Well, it wasn't even Pachamama. That's number one. Number two, they weren't worshiping it. I have a whole video dedicated to this explaining that. I'll put it in the show notes for those of y'all who may not have seen it, but it was with Father Deacon Dragani, where we walk through the ceremony and give you the context play by play and show it wasn't Pachamama and there was no idolatry. But number two, I don't worship Pachamama. I don't even venerate the Virgin Mary under the title of Our Lady of the Amazon and under that form. I don't. It's not anything that I venerate. No. Nope. I'll stick to my Theotokos icons. I'm good. So, here we go. Another person who talks out of their you-know-what, doesn't know what they're saying. Well, we've been seeing a whole lot of this, right? Rash judgment. Christians died horrible deaths to not venerate pagan demons. Bergoglio willingly does just that. Again, like I say, yeah, I see Jacers has it in the chat. Slamming that Pachamama card down, bam, throw it down hard. What happens is, as I've explained before, anytime you get stuck, let's say you're a radical traditionalist. Here, I'll give you a tip, Radtrans. You're a radical traditionalist, okay? And somebody just cornered you and showed that you're behaving like a Protestant and that your position isn't Catholic and that you actually resemble the modernists in some ways and Protestants in other ways. Whenever you get confronted with that and you don't know what to do, just completely ignore everything that is said and just throw down the Pachamama card. It's a trump card for just throw that down and say, you guys have Pachamama, and then just bam, walk away. Just walk away like this. All smug like that. Just walk away. And everything will be okay. and the whole argument will be over. And you would have won. You would have saved the day when you do that. Yes. Wow. It doesn't work anymore. The Pachamama issue doesn't work anymore. It's already been demonstrated. It was a Pachamama. There's no idolatry. You got to get something else. Number 2, when has it ever been Catholic and traditional to slander the Pope publicly? It is not traditional. It is not Catholic. In fact, it is a grave sin according to Scripture. And per 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 9 through 10, one spends an eternity in hell for this sin if one does not go to confession. So my advice to you is go to confession. Let's see. I'm actually going to show that clip here in a moment. Let me skip that for a second here. Okay, let's see. This one says, it's easy to dismiss Taylor, referring to Taylor Marshall. I think this was, again, a comment that was in a thread of something related to Taylor Marshall. It's easy to dismiss Taylor, but he's trying to be faithful to the faith. Unlike Francis, who's infected with liberation theology, a listed heresy. He's infected with it. Gosh. All right. Well, liberation theology, a listed heresy. Well, I'm not going to quibble over terms here, but Pope Francis doesn't teach liberation theology. Pope Francis hasn't taught any heresies. But the infection that is in the church that I've noticed lately is not Pope Francis teaching heresy. The infection is commenters like this who slander and falsely accuse the Pope on social media while claiming to be Catholic. That is the infection that is spreading like wildfire. It's toxic and it's everywhere. It's pervasive. Quite unfortunate to see, though. All right. Pray for the conversion of Pope Francis, one person says. Well, there's certainly a sense in which we all need prayer for our own conversions daily, but that's not the sense in which they mean. They mean the sense in that he's not a Catholic. And tell me again, by the way, tell me again that they're not similar to the Protestants. People were saying that. Tell me that again. Somebody who's, I think they were on Twitter earlier, freaked out, went into a frenzy, a panic, that I said, this is a new Protestant rebellion. Freaked out. No, we're not like the Protestants in any way. Well, yeah, you actually sound a whole lot like the Protestants, and here's proof positive. I mean, right there for you. Pray for the conversion of Pope Francis. If you don't think that sounds Protestant, you're proving my point. Okay, you're all right. Now, if you agree it sounds Protestant, then okay, you agree with me. Then that some people are starting to sound like Protestants. Okay, let's go to the next one here. This is what he said. What he said. Michael was speaking in tongues. These are interesting. Okay, let's see what this one is. I reject the heretical statements on ecumenism, as we all should reject heresy. So there. Oh, I remember this. This was in the context of Vatican II. The person saying, in the context of Vatican II, they reject the heretical statements on ecumenism. Okay, so inner peace, inner calmness. Let me still my heart. When has it ever been traditional to accuse an ecumenical council of teaching heresy? This is Catholicism 101. This is why I say you sound like a Protestant. I reject the heretical statements on ecumenism, as we all should reject heresy. What Vatican II said about ecumenism, as I've demonstrated it multiple times, already. Somebody said, is Michael doing yoga? No, I would have no idea how to even do yoga. I reject the heretical statements on ecumenism. Well, as I've demonstrated, Vatican II and the way it defines ecumenism, regardless of what some other people might define it as, Vatican II, y'all are killing me in the comment section. Y'all are cracking me up. Vatican II defines ecumenism. Let me just look over here, not at y'all for a second. Vatican II defines ecumenism as the endeavor of, or the project of bringing non-Catholics back to the one Catholic Church. That's how Vatican II defines ecumenism. Now, you might find other people who define it differently. I understand that. I totally get that. But that's not how Vatican II defines it. Vatican II defines it as the ecumenism of return, helping non-Catholics to get over their objections to the Catholic Church so that we may be reunited. That is perfectly orthodox. To deny that is itself probably close to heresy. If not heresy itself, it's probably close to heresy. So the irony here is this person is rejecting ecumenism as heresy when in reality, ecumenism is incredibly orthodox. What it is they have a false understanding of ecumenism. Why? Because they've never read Vatican II. That's why. They don't know what they're talking about, but they get on social media and they're so confident and they're willing to attack an ecumenical council and accuse it of heresy. Who does that sound like? Like the Protestants. This person says, I certainly do not reject the statements on Catholic dogma, which we all should believe. Well, here's the problem. In this person's mind, Vatican II either teaches dogma or it teaches heresy. They think either dogma or heresy. They don't realize that aside from the fact that it doesn't teach heresy, there's a very wide range of doctrinal teachings in Vatican II, a very wide range, some of which are restatements of dogma, sure, some of which are restatements of secondary objects of infallibility, sure. One, Lumen Gentium 21, might be a new statement of definitive Catholic doctrine, and then a plethora of non-definitive yet authoritative teachings all throughout Vatican II, a wide range of them. So they think that, well, I just have to accept anything that Vatican II says that's dogma. I just have to accept that. Everything else is up for grabs. I could throw it away. I could accuse it of heresy. What they're missing is this huge thing in between, and that is the category of non-definitive teachings and also secondary objects of infallibility. They're missing that, and they don't realize they have an obligation to assent to those things. You know why? Because they didn't actually read Vatican II, because Vatican II explains that in Lumen Gentium 25. It already explained that, so they didn't read it. So anybody who's saying this kind of stuff is very clearly somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about. Okay. The Pope is a very poor leader. I don't think it's fair to call faithful Catholics new Protestants for noticing. Yes. So this is one of the people who got just furious with me. That I said that some people who are radical traditionalists in some ways resemble the Protestant reformers and are thus new Protestant reformers, a new Protestant Reformation, not the old one, a new one, because there are differences. But there's a whole lot of similarities as well. And the person says in response, I don't think it's fair to call faithful Catholics new Protestants for noticing that the Pope is a very poor leader. Yeah, because that's really what my position was. Yeah, absolutely. That was totally my position. And you guys don't have a problem with comprehension skills, and you guys don't have a problem with rash judgment. This is what I'm talking about, and I see it non-stop. somebody arguing against a position that I don't know who holds, but it certainly isn't me. I'm not saying that anybody is a new Protestant for saying the Pope is a poor leader. Even if you believe that, even if he is, I'm not saying anybody is a new Protestant for saying that. This is a lack of comprehension skills or goodwill, one of the two. What I'm saying is everything that I've pretty much been saying up to this point on this show, and that is people who are accusing the magisterium of teaching heresy, people are accusing an ecumenical council, for instance, of teaching heresy, or the Pope, or who are rejecting the authority of the Pope. I'm saying that is an indication of a new Protestant Reformation, and that's true. I'm right about that. I'm not wrong. Engage that. Deal with that instead of straw manning me like this. See what else we have here. Just as we were talking about it, Pope Francis preaches heresy, and they don't spell heresy correctly. Pope Francis teaches heresy. I guess Forrest Gump wrote this. It's like a box of chocolates, heresy. Mama told me that the Pope teaches heresy. I'm gonna just figure that this was, autocorrect from his phone or something. I don't know. Why would it autocorrect it to that though? Okay, Pope Francis preaches heresy, and again, they don't ever say that they are similar to the Protestants. They can say the Pope teaches heresy, but they are not like the Protestants. Okay, don't liken them to the Protestants. There have been many anti-popes throughout the history of the church. This is just cowardice. I wonder how many of them have actually read like J.N.D. Kelly's Oxford Dictionary of Popes, the history of popes, and really read through cases of anti-popes and stuff like that. I'm curious, but let's just pass over that. Okay. There have been many anti-popes throughout the history of the church. This is just cowardice. Pope Francis teaches heresy. Well, aside from the fact that Pope Francis doesn't actually teach heresy, there's a huge problem here. Number one, you haven't had a pope in 10 years? Okay. Now, let's say, all right, well, it's just a long interregnum, We've had anti-popes before. Okay, let's go down that road for a second. So the next guy who gets elected by a college of cardinals, mostly made by an anti-pope. Don't know how we're going to figure that one out, but let's just say somehow we figured out that problem. The next guy they elect, when that guy affirms the papacy of Pope Francis and the magisterium of Pope Francis, because he certainly is going to, when he does that, is he also going to be an anti-pope? Or are you going to say a legitimate pope is holding to the papacy and magisterium of an anti-pope? Well, you're probably going to say, well, no, he's an anti-pope too. Okay. All right. So we're going to have that guy in office. Don't know how long. Let's just say it's another 10 years, maybe even 20 years. All right. Let's say we go 20, 30 years now. Okay. And when his successor gets elected by a college of cardinals made up entirely by cardinals who are appointed by an anti-pope. And that new pope then confirms the papacy and magisterium of the previous two popes who are supposedly anti-popes. What are we going to say about him? And then the cycle just continues and continues, decade after decade, century after century, where the claims of Vatican I of having perpetual successors makes no sense anymore. So where does this really end? It ends in a new schism, a new church. The people who are taking this position, if they continue with it, they're siding with a movement that's going to be separate from the Catholic Church and is going to remain separate from the Catholic Church indefinitely, unless there's somehow some kind of reconciliation, which is, I mean, how many reconciliations have there really been with schismatic groups in church history? Not many. Usually when you have a schism, that's it. Unless it's just a very small one, it's generally not going to be healed. It will just continue. Unless some other factors squash it out, like an emperor who destroys and kills everybody who is part of that schism or something. You know, that's happened in the past in some instances. So my problem with this is the person who says this and embraces this, it just goes oh, we've had anti-popes before. You're never really going to recover from that unless you just retrace your steps. You're not going to recover from that position. You've bought into something that has just completely separated you from the Catholic Church. Because make no mistake about it, you're a schismatic. You are in schism. And here's why. Because Pope Francis is the Pope. And since you consider him an anti-Pope and you do not submit to his magisterium, by definition, per canon law, you are a schismatic. By definition, that is what a schism is. So by definition, you're already in schism. Will you ever recover from that? No, because the next pope is going to confirm Pope Francis and his magisterium. I have no doubt in my mind. There's no reason to believe otherwise. Unless you're just hoping some miracle, St. Peter's going to come down from heaven and elect a new pope. There are some people who believe that. Okay, but if we're going to go with that approach, you can hold to anything you want. You can say anything you want and just hope that there's going to be a deus ex machina at the very end. And, you know, Peter's going to come down from heaven at the very end and save the whole thing. You can hold to anything you want at that point. And there's no good reason to believe that anyway, because again, it's very clear whoever the next pope is, he's going to affirm the papacy of Pope Francis. And you're just going to continue to have that generation after generation, pope after pope. So I honestly feel like people who go with this have put themselves in a position they can't recover from unless they repent of their schism and return to the Catholic Church. This person says, and no traditional Catholic rejects the authority of the apostolic see. This is one of the same people, I recall this comment. This is one of the same people earlier who was saying, you know, they're defining traditional Catholic as a radical traditionalist. That's who they have in mind, actually. Not us faithful traditional Catholics. They have the schismatic group in mind. And they're saying they don't reject the authority of the apostolic see. Yes, you do. You're the same person who rejected the authority of Vatican II, which is backed by multiple popes. You reject the authority of the apostolic see. What they're trying to say is, well, I accept it in theory. I just don't accept its application with Vatican II or the post-conciliar movement. Congrats. You're part of Eastern Orthodox ecclesiology. Congrats. That's what they say as well. They say, we accept the authority of the apostolic see. We accept the papacy. We just don't accept the extent that you claim the apostolic see has in its authority. You're no different than the Eastern Orthodox. So you do reject the apostolic see and its authority. You do. You just don't realize it. And you're also equivocating. You can say, I hold to it in theory. Yeah, Luther could say, I hold to the papacy in theory. A papacy that preaches the gospel and sola fide and justification by faith alone. I can get on board with the papacy like that. Luther would have no problem with that kind of papacy. The problem is he's redefining what the apostolic see and its extent of its authority is. Just like they are doing. Hence why I say it's a new Protestant Reformation, because he sounds just like the old guys in a lot of ways. Let's see. I think that was it for all of those. Let me share that clip that I wanted to show you. Let me make sure that my audio is enabled so you can hear that. Behold, the new Protestant Reformation.
How can Francis be the Pope? How can this be the vicar of Christ? I'm at a loss. I do not see how Francis Bergoglio can be the vicar of Christ, a putative pope.
Right.
What does he do? He invites the diabolical and the demonic into the church.
It's okay. So what we just heard so far, I don't see how he could be the vicar of Christ, said Martin Luther. I don't see how he's not anything but a demon worshiper. He's inviting demon worship into the Vatican. I mean, but they're not Protestants, right? It's not a new Protestant Reformation. Don't you dare say that. Don't you dare say it's not a new Protestant Reformation, because a Protestant totally wouldn't say something like this. But let's watch that again with some additional commentary that I did on it in this little short video.
How can Francis be the Pope? How can this be the vicar of Christ? I'm at a loss. I do not see how Francis Bergoglio can be the vicar of Christ, a putative pope. What does he do? He invites the diabolical and the demonic into the church.
It's curious, Taylor Marshall makes a living slandering Pope Francis and constantly questioning whether or not he's the Pope. And then he wants to offer a course on how to convince non-Catholics about the truth of Catholicism. Well, here's my advice. If you want to become Catholic, don't watch people who don't seem to believe Pope Francis is the Pope and believe that Pope Francis is worshiping and inviting demons into the Catholic Church. After all, why would you want to be part of a church that worships demons and is led by somebody who is not even Catholic?
How can Francis?
So I've labeled this, I put TM evangelism here, but I've labeled this the worst evangelism pitch in the history of Catholicism right there. You have to be Catholic in order to be saved. Gotta be Catholic. All right, well, how do we come? You have to be in communion with the Pope. Oh, okay. All right. But the Pope worships demons, and the Pope isn't even actually the Pope. So you want me to be in communion? To be in the Catholic Church, I have to be in communion with somebody who's not a Catholic and isn't the Pope. To be in the Catholic Church, I have to be in communion with the Pope. So I have to be in communion with someone who isn't Catholic and who isn't the Pope. And I have to be in communion with somebody who's worshiping demons. To be a Catholic, you have to be in communion with the Pope. That's number one. And you have to do it by being in communion with this guy who isn't a Catholic and isn't the Pope. Let's walk through that one more time in case that wasn't clear. In order to be saved, you have to be in the Catholic Church in communion with the Pope. So you have to be in communion with this guy who is not Catholic and is not the Pope. Right. Yeah. Oh, and let me add on top of it, he worships demons and he invites demon worship into the church. You got to be in communion with that church, though. This is the worst evangelism pitch I have ever seen. This is what makes Protestants, not converts them. That's why I found it quite hilarious to see this thing here. Dr. Taylor Marshall, how do you convince non-Catholics about the truth of Catholicism? Join us for a free online class. Stop. 5 secrets to convincing non-Catholics. Secret number 1, don't watch Taylor Marshall. Secret number 2, don't believe people who say you have to be in communion with the Catholic Church. And to be in communion with the Catholic Church, you have to be in communion with the Pope. But then they say the guy who is claiming to be the Pope isn't the Pope and isn't Catholic, but you have to be in communion with him. That's secret number 2. Secret number 3, don't join a group that says, hey, come join us in our demon worshiping communion. Now, you're not going to worship demons. I'm not asking you to worship demons. But I'm asking you to be in communion with this guy who is worshiping demons. And I'm asking you to be in communion with him for the necessity of your soul, even though he doesn't seem to be the Pope. It's the worst evangelism pitch I have ever seen in my life. And what's amazing is they don't see the tension here. They haven't figured it out. It just hasn't clicked yet. And I don't know if it's going to at this point. Perhaps not, but TM should go be Western Orthodox, to be honest. Well, is he fundamentally different from the Western Orthodox? Not really. He's kind of right there with them. They're going to hold to effectively the same liturgical patrimony that he's going to hold to. And the ecclesiology they hold to is very similar to the ecclesiology that Marshall holds to. So, yeah, I don't know. Anyways, I think those are all the comments I had for y'all. What I'll do is I'll collect a few more over the coming week and see if we can do some more if y'all enjoy these. If so, let me know that you enjoyed it. Put it in the comment section, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Let me know if you want to see more of these. I always find them fun, and I always appreciate hearing y'all's interaction during it. Y'all were cracking me up earlier saying that Michael often practices yoga exposed or something like that. Somebody is going to do some kind of clip about that. Let's see. Respect my hearsay. More, please. Need Pastor Bob back. Oh, yeah. Maybe I could do like a clip of Pastor Bob doing a debate with some of these guys. And Pastor Bob finds it really odd because these guys have a position that's very similar to his own, and he's confused because he thought that he is very far away from the Catholic Church, but then these Catholics are saying things that he says, and he's really confused. So maybe I'll do that. Anyways, like I said, put it in the comment section. And let me know if y'all want to see more of these. Y'all are cracking me up there in the comments. I'm gonna end it here. Like I said, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. The more you interact with the video, the more this will be shared on social media by YouTube. So you want more people to see this, do your part, interact. Also check me out, patreon.com/reason and theology to get access to extra content and support what I'm doing here. It's going to do it, y'all. I'll see you later.
Is it possible that ancient aliens created other ancient aliens? Ancient alien theorists say yes. But then, is it also possible that ancient aliens created the ancient alien theorists? And are the ancient aliens and ancient alien theorists led by the Vatican, headed by the Pope? Ancient alien theorists and certain unnamed Catholic YouTubers say yes.
Tired of Catholic shows that peddle conspiracy theories that sound like something out of an Ancient Aliens episode? Check out Reason and Theology for a more reasonable take. Hey everybody, just wanted to tell you about my new free ebook, Church Chaos, Biblical Insights for Confused Catholics. If you are a confused Catholic and you're thinking about leaving the Catholic Church, or you're thinking about converting to the church, but you see that there's a crisis in the church and you're just unsure, this is the book for you. Again, it is free. Just simply go to reasonandtheology.com. You'll see a pop-up that comes up on your screen. Just simply click on it and you'll put in your email and it will provide you the free PDF ebook right then and there. Please check it out if you're confused about the situation in the Catholic Church today. reasonandtheology.com. Are you confused about how Catholic teaching authority works? With encyclicals, papal bulls, councils, and many other things, it's easy to get confused on what is authoritative and what is not. Fortunately, at maximusinstitute.com, I have prepared a course explaining the Magisterium from A to Z. Visit the website and check out the course Understanding the Magisterium for more information.